Good evening, everyone, and good morning to those that listen to this later on the audio-only podcast. I'm your host, Jason Miles, on another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Glad to have you here. If you like what we're doing, please hit like and subscribe. It's a passive gesture that goes a long way. If you're a returning listener, subscriber, or one of our very valued patrons, well, all right. So good to have you back. Just a reminder, this is listener-funded programming here on TIR. We appreciate your viewership and support. But without y'all, we couldn't do this. Just a reminder that because of the uncensored nature of this show, we often get demonetized. So if you have the means and feel so inclined, consider becoming a patron. For as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year, you can access champagne rooms and our patron-only call-in shows. You get discounts on live events like our live show in SF. That's right. Patrons get a discount on the ticket. Also, that $3 makes sure we can stay on air. All that being said, after the show tonight, we'll be going into the patron-only champagne room where we can continue this conversation for a bit before we move on to more I can't even say the name of my own show. TIR like shenanigans. So if you would like to be a part of the no-holds-barred insanity that is the champagne room, and you're not sure about the $3 commitment, then guess what? There is a free trial for you on Patreon. That's right. You can try us out for 7 whole days wherever you are watching or listening to this show. There are links in the description for becoming a patron. And there should be links in the description for the live show in San Francisco that's coming up. Getting a little nervous, I can't lie. But today, right now, let's talk about Trump 2.0 and immigration this time around. During his first term, Donald Trump tapped into xenophobic fears of a Latin American invasion, painting a picture of a marauding horde threatening the so-called American way of life. He vowed to build a wall, not on the backs of American taxpayers, but on Mexico's dime. As absurd as these proclamations were, Trump rode this wave of racist paranoia and faux populist rhetoric straight to the White House. According to Trump, Mexico wasn't sending their best, just murderers, rapists, and ne'er-do-wells. His solution? Besides the taxpayer-funded border wall that Mexico never paid for, he championed a policy of separating children from their parents. These unaccompanied minors were kept in what amounted to dog kennels wrapped in aluminum blankets and left to languish in appalling conditions. When news of these atrocities broke, Democratic members of Congress flocked to the border to inspect the facilities and decry Trump's child separation policy. In this moment, the Democratic Party positioned itself as the champion of immigrant rights, gaining massive public support. Sanctuary cities began to emerge in blue districts, some in name only, others offering real refuge by refusing to cooperate with ICE. Yet, despite these symbolic and substantive efforts, the fight for immigrant rights has largely withered since Joe Biden's election. Biden's administration, despite the lofty promises, maintained a hardline approach to immigration, often deporting migrants at a rate that even now Trump 2.0 hasn't matched. But Trump is never one to be outdone, especially on his signature policies. Recently, Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1789, the same legislation used to justify the internment of Japanese, German, and Italian Americans, mainly during World War II. This time, his target is the Venezuelan gang Tren de Agua. I kept saying Tren de Agua. I think I spelled it wrong, but it's not. It's Aragua. Aragua. I said it wrong and I apologize. I apologize to any gang members I offended. Which he has labeled not just a terrorist organization, but one that has allegedly declared war on the United States. Within hours of this proclamation, Trump ordered the transfer of hundreds of immigrants to El Salvador, a country notorious for its brutal prison system. But how real is this threat? Little is known about the true size or capacity of Tren. Just call him Tren. That way, I won't offend anyone. I think it's Aragua, but I don't want to be wrong and get fucked. I don't want any Tren de Aragua people to see me on the streets and you don't know saying our name. I know. I just speak really shitty Spanish. Raising the question, is this just more of Trump's political kayfabe, manufactured drama designed to energize his base while scapegoating innocent Venezuelans, many of whom are already suffering under U.S. imposed sanctions? Moreover, with migrant caravans becoming a flashpoint in places like Chicago and Aurora, has Trump's narrative about immigration become a winning strategy for the GOP? Will this, quote, terrorist designation and deportation blitz fuel public support for his policies, or will it become another political albatross around his neck? And finally, how open are America's borders? The right continues to scream about a porous frontier, but is that narrative rooted in reality? To explore these questions, I'm joined by Jenn Budd, a former immigration officer turned activist. Jenn will share her experiences at the border, what radicalized her, and what's actually happening to people caught in the crosshairs of this political burlesque. Without any further ado, please welcome Jenn Budd.
How are you doing, Jason?
I'm okay. Also, wherever you guys are watching or listening later, there's a link in the description to Jenn's website where you can grab her book and read a little bit more about her. That being said, you were a Border Patrol agent. Where were you a Border Patrol agent at?
I was a Border Patrol agent in the mid 90s and early 2000s in Campo, California, San Diego sector. So up in the mountains of East County, San Diego.
Is that where there's a wall? Or there's no wall there because it's so like deserty and mountainy?
Well, when I first got there was not a wall. So it was a completely different environment than what they have nowadays. It was common for to have relationships with the people that lived right there on the south side. They often used the east-west border road to go back and forth, and they often crossed back and forth to visit family members, and it wasn't, as big of a deal as it is today. But eventually it did get a wall down there. They blasted through mountains and so forth to put up a wall that didn't stop anybody, just like the walls today don't stop anybody. So, you know, it pays a lot of contracts. People make a lot of money off of it.
How did you guys feel when the wall went up?
Honestly, at first, I was a young agent and I thought, well, maybe it's not a bad idea because we would have a lot of uh, drug smugglers come through, just barreling through the barbed wire fence and bringing dope and sometimes people through. And so it seemed like maybe in some places it would be a good idea to stop the vehicles, but it doesn't even stop the vehicles, to be honest with you. They just cut through it in a matter of a few minutes and they just drive right on through it with big old SUVs and stuff. So it doesn't do anything. It's a huge waste of money.
And I do have to ask, was there a singular moment or was it a collection of moments that kind of radicalized you?
It was a collection of moments for me because so I was born in 71
Okay.
and I'm a Gen Xer. And I was
Right on.
born I was raised mostly in Alabama, but through a liberal family, but still we're talking about 70s and 80s. And I didn't know anything about the southern border. And even when I went to college, I have a criminal law degree, a Bachelor of Science, and graduated top of my class from Auburn University, and never even really knew much about the Border Patrol or what was going on over here. And what I knew of it was what they told me. Oh, it's like the FBI, but it's on the border. People bringing in drugs and this and that. And it was like, okay. And they would say there's legal means with which people can enter. They just choose not to do it.
They
and
just
it
choose
comes.
not to do it.
They
That's
choose
crazy.
not to do it because they can either not afford it
Yeah.
or they can't get a passport or they can't get a worker's permit because of, whatever reason. So
Mhm.
pretty naive at that age too. I was 24 years old at the time, and most agents are just out of high school. To be honest with you, most are not very well educated. So
Well, I mean, it's where you're talking about where you are, the East County of San Jose, for those that don't know, is not the rich part of the county of San Jose. I would
it's
assume
San Diego. San Diego.
I said San Jose. Sorry, I'm from the Bay
That's
Area,
okay.
and there's only one good place to be, and that's the Bay Area.
There you go.
Well, San Diego knows it's conservative. It's,
Yeah, it is slightly
it's
conservative. Yeah,
but
but especially in East County,
oh
yes.
God, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It's a little clanny.
Hmm.
She laughed, and she's from Alabama. I just want you guys to think
Yeah.
about that for a second. I'm not making this up. But that being said, I mean, there's a certain class of people that are gonna take this job because it's a job that pays better than anything else you're gonna get around town because there's not a lot of industry in the area, right? There's the service industry, so this job is going to pay way more than the service industry. It's got great hours because it's 24 hours a day. You get benefits.
Hmm.
When I cross the border, I cross the San Ysidro 99.9% of the times.
Hmm.
If I have to go up, and most of the people that I see that work there are either Latino
Hmm.
or there's a handful of black people. I think they stop allowing black people at like Orange County. Like you get 7 through if there's a different border wall there.
They keep a specific type control on the amount of women, the amount of Latinos they allowed to enter, and the amount of Black people they allowed to enter. So,
I believe that.
and they are not even represented remotely to what their percentages are in management. So, yeah. So
No. There is a lot more look, there's a lot more women that work at the San Ysidro border.
in CBP, most certainly, in Border Patrol, not so much. Yeah.
Um, so, I can understand the job, but in touring, and then I worked in the Gulf of Mexico for a while, and I took a
Hmm.
Greyhound bus there because I hate flying.
Hmm.
Um, so there's these border stops that you have
Checkpoints.
and taking the bus there.
Hmm.
And I've seen some people get snatched up off the bus before,
Yep.
not having their paperwork, which again, coming from the Bay Area is a weird thing to see someone traveling with paperwork. Uh,
Hmm.
but every time I saw someone get taken off a bus, it was by someone that looked like them.
I know. Like 52, 53% of the Border Patrol is Latino. And that's done on purpose. It's specifically done on purpose so that we can claim that we're not racist when we do the things that we do to predominantly Latino migrants coming across.
And what do you mean by some of the things? If you feel comfortable talking about it.
Well, I mean, it starts with, the indoctrination in the academies, basically, that, there's a legal way to do it and they just choose not to do it. That the majority of them are criminals. And, certainly the demographics have changed. They changed in the Biden and Obama era when the majority of people coming um, ended up being asylum seekers. And
Mhm.
so, back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for, I mean, it's not uncommon for the agents to beat the migrants, for the agents to give the migrants things called Mexican heart attacks. That's where they stand in
Mexican.
front of the camera with their back and then
Uh-huh.
they push on their carotid artery to make them pass out. That's how come some people suddenly die in processing and they give no reason why. It's because a lot of times they're getting in Mexican heart attacks. They like to run them over. That's still really popular today, and no agent ever gets held responsible for that, although they do it all the time. And we have them on video doing it all the time. The men typically separate out the attractive female migrants that they want to date or have sex with, and then meet them on the south side afterwards. and promise to, be their boyfriends and get them into the United States. I mean, you name it, they're involved. They're involved with everything. And in fact, from 2018 until now, I just did a quick blog before we got on here to talk. So since 2018,
Mhm.
Border Patrol has had more of their agents per population when you check the percentages. The Border Patrol agents commit more crimes than the migrants that they arrest. And the Border Patrol will say, they brag on CBP's website. Well, that's, the amount of our agents getting arrested, that's less than 1% per year, and that's within standards of other law enforcement agencies. But you know what? The migrants that they're arresting have criminal backgrounds less than 1%, less than what the agents have, and yet that's not acceptable.
Mhm.
So we're constantly, the Border Patrol is constantly criminalizing the migrants and trying to make them out to be more criminal than themselves. And so they've actually gone to the point of where to try and prove that they think the migrants are all criminals, is they're saying just crossing a line with your foot without a piece of paper. Well, that's terrorism, or that's criminal behavior. And their union even comes out and says that they're terrorists just because they cross a line without a paper. And it's like, but every Border Patrol agent knows that asylum seekers can legally cross
Mhm.
without inspection and hunt down an immigration agent and ask to be processed. That's 1158. That's US law. And so they criminalize them, and they need to criminalize them. And now on their stats, they add in, instead of the normal categories of rape, murder, theft, this and that, which their Border Patrol agents are listed as
Mhm.
committing these crimes, they add to the migrants to make them look more criminal, illegal entry, which is a civil immigration offense. And it's a
Mhm.
misdemeanor when you do it the first time. And when I was an agent, it was always handled administratively, though we could have handled it criminally in certain circumstances. But the majority of the time, it was handled administratively because it's essentially like a speeding ticket. And that's all there is to it. So they've just essentially criminalized as many people as they can to try and say, all these people are really bad criminals, really bad people,
Mhm.
and we're all heroes. But when you look at their own statistics,
Mhm.
percentage of population, the agents are committing more dangerous crimes and getting off of not having to serve sentences or not being found guilty simply because they are agents, whereas the migrants, of course, are found guilty very quite easily. The difference is that an agent doesn't spend their time in jail without an attorney and not able to make bond, and a migrant will spend most of their time in jail without an attorney, unable to make bond. So that's the difference.
Well, who polices the police in this situation? Is there
The Border
any
Patrol polices themselves.
awesome?
It
So
is awesome.
if you get harmed by, I mean, look, I live in Mexico. I'm a boringly heterosexual man. There's a ton of attractive women here. So
Hmm.
I can only imagine what some of these, dudes see crossing the border.
Hmm. They get
Um,
into trouble with that. Yeah.
uh, if a woman gets, secondary inspection, little handsy,
Hmm.
there's nowhere she can go to say,
Nope.
hey, this person, he went a little too far.
There's nowhere for the women who are agents can go because many of us, like me, my hazing in the agency was being raped by a classmate, and would I accept it or would I complain about it? The very first Latina in 1975, when they started allowing women to join the Border Patrol,
Mhm.
she was raped just as I was 20 years later. And in between all that, a lot of us were raped. And in between, after I was there, a lot more were raped. So sexual assault from Border Patrol agents goes against female agents. It goes against other agents' wives. It goes against other agents' children. I've seen that too. The Border Patrol has a
Oh,
huge problem with pedophilia. Huge problem with pedophilia.
oh,
And they will not admit it. I mean, they will not admit it. And they just lost three chiefs in 2 years to sexual misconduct. And nothing ever happens to them because the way we set it up
mhm,
prior to DHS and CBP after 9/11, We were under DOJ, and we did it the same way. The investigators who investigate us in our oversight agencies, whether it's CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, or DHS's Office of Inspector General, which is DHS's, kind of accountability oversight agency. We fill their investigators with our own agents. The head of CBP investigations is run by a former Border Patrol agent, by the name of Daniel Altman, and he always makes sure that the agents are always okay. So you see reports like the Haitian incident of 2021
Oh, with
when
the whips and the horse.
yeah, I was there. I
If
was there
you
to
were
watch it.
you weren't working.
I wasn't working. No, I left way before then, but I wasn't working. I was there watching what they were doing.
The
And I wasn't there
optics
when the
on that.
whipping happened, but I was there at the end when they got rid of, 10,000 people in like 3 days. It was ridiculous.
It's the optics on that. You're like, who greenlit this? No. Get the horses. That's what we need.
But see, this is the thing, Jason, is that is normal behavior. I have a prior case back in like I want to say 2013, where this guy, he was a smuggler and he was smuggling people across, and a guy on a horseback. Yes, I do have a book. We'll talk about it in a minute. But agent on horseback came up, and the smuggler started kind of running away from him, running back south. And the agent started whipping him with his long reins. That's what they're taught to do. I've watched agents do it over and over when I was working in Campo, and I know that they're trained to whip the migrants with those reins. That's the only reason why they keep the reins that long, is to whip the migrants and to, herd them over like animals to a certain area. And you know, the issue was that they were trying to turn them back, and then also using the violence. So both of those things, obviously the violence is a crime, but also as an agent, once somebody puts a foot on US soil, you cannot turn them back and send them to Mexico. That's illegal. So they were violating the law that way too. And then the investigators from CBP OPR, who were old Border Patrol agents, wrote in the investigation report, it's not that big of a deal because nobody actually really even went back. And I just kind of think like, would it be a big deal if you stopped me and I had cocaine in my car, but I really didn't give the cocaine to anybody? I mean, it's like they couldn't complete the crime, so it didn't happen, kind of thing. And so this is the type of ridiculous reports that we get out of the Border Patrol because the agents do not have any criminal training. I had prior criminal training when I was in college as a district attorney investigator, so I understand how to do investigations. But I was just flabbergasted when I entered the Border Patrol and I saw just the lack of education, the lack of understanding of law, the lack of ability to think through complex situations, and it's just really astonishing, the lack of education and the lack of professionalism within the United States Border Patrol. But that's pretty much the norm. That's the norm.
A friend of mine was thinking about working in law enforcement because California pays pretty well and better than writing and having a leftist podcast. But that was actually one of the conversations we had. Literally, what you're just saying right now is that he was like, you'd be surprised the lack of a certain amount of like reasoning skills a lot of people have, and then in a job where you get to have a gun, you would think that maybe you'd want people with higher levels of certain reasoning skills, and it's like, no, it's not.
But they don't really need to, though, because the courts let them get away with everything. I mean, I've seen agents go into court and say things like, "Well, I'm such an expert sign cutter." So sign cutting, let me explain that. Sign cutting is when you follow the footprints of somebody. So you're tracking them like you would track an animal, like you're hunting an animal.
Gotcha.
So I've seen agents say, well, I can tell from the footprints in the dirt or sand if a person's carrying dope. And I'm like, what? What? Can you tell what kind of dope they're carrying? I mean, come on. And and the judge and everybody will go, huh? And they'll go, oh yeah, you can tell just we're very experienced. We can tell by how deep the pattern is in there. And I'm like, okay, I'm overweight now. I'm no longer a fit agent. So how can you tell if I'm just 50 pounds overweight or if I have 50 pounds of dope on my back?
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
but the judges let them get away with it. They had this secret cover up teams in the Border Patrol for 30 years called the Critical Incident Teams. Border Patrol does not have the legal authority still today to investigate their own use of force incidents, and yet they constantly do. And they developed these teams back in the 80s, and they told the outside investigating agencies like the local sheriffs and PD and the FBI and everybody, this is just a liaison to help you guys when these incidents happen. But really what they've been doing all these years is getting rid of evidence, and I've been documenting it on my website with each of these stories. So I was the agent that came forward and said, dude, we have secret cover up teams, and that's why we've never been arrested in 100 years
Mhm.
for killing a migrant. Never in 100 years.
And it does happen more often than we think, right?
Oh, it happens a lot. I mean, even like children walking down the street in Mexico, there's a whole group of children, families that have lost children and loved ones to Border Patrol agents running up and shooting through the fence south into Mexico. And they never are held accountable. And the reason why is because the Border Patrol critical incident teams that after I came forward and outed them, unfortunately, the Biden administration didn't do the right thing and learn the lesson and have truth and reconciliation hearings and all this. They then took those same people that were running these illegal teams all this time and then moved them into CBP OPR. So now they're just continuing to cover up the things. And their boss is now Daniel Altman, who's, a former Border Patrol agent. And that's how it works. I mean, they just keep going. They keep covering up things. Chief Owens was the chief before this last chief now, Chief Banks. And him and Chief Chavez were found to be in Mexico um, trying to sell the Border Patrol logo to a Mexican tequila maker and having parties and everything with him down in Mexico and everything. Nothing wrong with that, right? And so they do an
Jeez.
investigation on it, and
Yeah.
we never hear anything more about it. And he's now moved on to some other chief duty in CBP and this and that. He's going to control part of CBP. They just keep going. They just keep going and going, and nobody ever holds them accountable. And unfortunately, the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, quite frankly.
Yeah, I did want to bring that up because there's this idea that there are open borders, and I've never
Hmm.
really been a fan of that. I was actually recently interviewed by a friend of mine, and we got into this conversation about this situation in Aurora, where
Mm.
there was an apartment takeover, is the way they worded it. Now,
Hmm.
I grew up in a place called Richmond, California, which would be an urban ghetto, whatever, you know. So I understand the hood and hood politics. That
Hmm.
being said, um, real life ain't a movie.
Hmm.
And if you really did take over an apartment complex, the police would have no problem shooting the shit out of everybody, tearing it down and blowing it up. They've done
Yep.
it before, have
Yep.
feel real comfortable doing it.
Hmm.
Um, would you follow that story at all? That Aurora, Colorado story?
I did follow it, and it just was. It was ridiculous in that they had no proof of it, and yet they keep saying these things, and then I guess certain people believe it on certain channels because they have their followers that only believe what they want to believe, and they know that it doesn't matter if you say no, this is actually what happened, and you prove it because their viewers are not watching those channels and they don't see
Yeah.
that. So that's where we are, is just simply different platforms giving them what they want to
I
hear.
mean,
Is
I know some
unfortunate.
things happened. I think they beat up the landlord or something, but he was a bit of a
Yeah.
slumlord. Like, look, you can live in a bad apartment building and bad stuff
Hmm.
happens. I do not say I'm not saying that that didn't happen, but when you're
Hmm.
talking about some Nino Brown taking over the Carter bullshit. I'm like, come on, man.
Mm,
There's
mhm.
first of all, what is the operation to do that other than shaking people down for whatever money they were given for rent, which probably wasn't that much because I think they were there on these were all asylum seekers, right?
I'm not sure if they were all asylum seekers, but yeah, my
Because
understanding
if
was.
there's rent programs, it's like, well, how much money are you really paying out of your own
Mm,
pocket?
mhm.
It's like it's
I
not like
think,
you're making room for your crack operation. Those days are gone.
yeah, and I mean that's what we see when we hear these immigration stories, these
Mm,
raids, these, we saw it with the first raid they did when in Kern County, during the fires up here in California, the Palisades fires was the first raid. They give this list out to the press and they say, we arrested this guy and his horrible crime was he raped an 8-year-old girl and this guy did this and this guy did this, and these were targeted enforcements. But when I watch the videos, they're not targeted enforcements. They're just standing around outside of like an AM PM store or
Jesus.
Circle K,
Yeah.
stopping everybody that walks out with their morning coffee who's brown or black,
Mhm. Mhm.
and stopping random people and stabbing their tires, and they're US citizens, and claiming that they're smuggling people and this and that. And they give out this wonderful list of, oh, we got this person, this person, this person, this person. But yet they won't give the press the name of anybody. Now, my understanding and my experience as an agent in the three immigration agencies, the enforcement agencies, ICBP, Border Patrol, they brag about everything. There ain't shit they won't brag about. And that's why everybody knows where they're going to raid, because they can't stop bragging about, like, oh, we're going to go to Aurora first. Well, yeah, okay. They all knew you were going to Aurora first, so that's why they left. Or that you're going to go to Boston. You say, oh, I'm going to come to Boston.
Mm.
Don't threaten me. Tom Homan's all upset and this other stuff. And then when he goes to Boston, he's like, I don't understand why there's no it's like, and then he
There's
says
no
the
brown
press
people to
is the
snatch.
one that's leaking it, and then they start, I mean, it's just, it's they're always bragging about this. So if the Border Patrol and ICE and all of them, it's like these planes, these supposed, they're calling them deportations, but they're not. They're forced disappearances, forced removals
Mm.
to El Salvador. Um, if they claim these are the worst of the worst, show me that they are the worst of the worst. Because if they were, they would be giving you all the court documents and bragging about it and showing it, but they won't do it. So that's not what they're doing. They're just randomly stopping people. And what we're seeing down here on the southern border is they are in our Latino communities and they are just driving around stopping people and grabbing people off the streets.
Which is frightening.
Hmm.
Again, I live
Yeah.
here in Mexico, and I only cross the border if I have to do something like speak or see my children. Other than
Hmm.
that, I live in Mexico. I don't
Hmm.
go shopping in the States. Fuck that. I don't need anything over there.
Hmm.
But that being said, the border cross time has been significantly shorter because of deportations and people frightened to go to work. Have you heard
Hmm.
about this at the southern border?
I know that right now the crossings are down, and I know that even with, um, well, the crossings are down, number one, because the asylum system is completely closed.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be anybody trying to present themselves at the port of entry. And at the San Isidro port of entry, a lot of times they force the people trying to claim asylum into the similar lines that where people like you are trying to cross. So it creates a lot of problems. And they do that intentionally to piss people off. Um,
Oof.
yeah. And, you know, generally what happens is when a new administration comes in or when the president drastically changes how the asylum system works, like with CBP One app and so forth, it takes the migrants about a month or two to figure out what they're going to do. And so when Trump came in and he immediately closed the asylum system based on he said it was an invasion, national security, although he's already declared the invasion is over and he's won. um, he, you know, everybody stops and they're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best thing to do? And if I cross now, what's going to happen? But the truth is the whole last year of Biden's administration saw drastic decreases. And when with Trump's first couple of months in office, it's a continuation of those decreases.
Mhm.
But because he closed the asylum system, like I said, every agent knows if you want to make people cross illegally, close the asylum system. That will force people to cross illegally and then face Border Patrol agents. And they have started crossing illegally. We're starting to see them die out here in our mountains. It's
Oh,
still a little bit cold at night, and so they can die. A 16-year-old girl watched her father die in front of her eyes just
oh,
the other day, just last week on Otay Mountain. And the Border Patrol was like, and we took the girl to the hospital and she was checked out and she was okay. So now she's in custody and blah, blah. And, I'm like, she just saw her father die. She's not okay. You
yeah.
know, there's nothing for this child. She's now an unaccompanied child. They're going to have to find either relatives in the US or send her back to where she came from somehow. Um, and that's how it is. Her father dies, and then he gets whisked up and taken away by Border Patrol, and she never sees him again. Um, they are crossing more and more, but we are not going to hear about it because the Border Patrol has suddenly stopped talking about the statistic of gotaways. So during the Biden administration, you heard all the time open borders and then the
Yeah.
statistic of gotaways. The statistics of gotaways are made up statistics that the Border Patrol puts out whenever somebody's in power that they don't like. So when Trump took office, we have had no more gotaways. And
Wow.
that's just not possible on a 2,000-mile southern border. I know everybody thinks that maybe it's linear and we can all see it and it's easy to control. It is
No,
not.
not at all.
It
It's
is
not
not at
at
all.
all.
I
It's
mean,
mountainous. It's very dangerous.
you can be right next to around a corner and not see somebody cross. It's amazing how many people can get across. And there are always people coming to our southern border, always people trying to come across legally. And if they cannot find a way to legally cross, then they will cross illegally to try and find a Border Patrol agent and claim asylum or something like that. If we want to inspect people who come to our country and know who's coming in and to have a legal avenue, then we have to have legal avenues with which to inspect people. It's not that hard.
Mhm.
And so, what they've been doing since the 90s when I got in is they've been militarizing and blocking it, making it more difficult. So when I was an agent in the mid 90s, it cost a Mexican about $700 to come
Mm.
across. But the guides back then were not cartel. They were just local people who lived there that knew the mountains and had been doing it for generations and from their fathers and so forth and knew how to guide people. And today it is cartel because today it will cost the Mexican about 10,000, $8,000 to $10,000 to cross. And the reason why is because we've made it so much more difficult. So back in the day, I would regularly arrest every night 3 groups of probably 20 to 30 men
Mhm.
by myself,
Mhm.
and sometimes a group of 100 people by myself. Today, they take like 9 agents to arrest like 6 people. So if you look at the amount of arrests per agent per month back when I was an agent, it was somewhere in like 23, 24, 25 arrests per month per agent for the amount of agents we had. And
Mhm.
then they tripled their force. And so it dropped it way down. And then now they pretty much have like less than 10 apprehensions a month per agent. But during the Obama years, before Trump got in,
Mhm.
he was averaging less than 2 apprehensions per agent per month. And yet when Trump comes in, he's like, oh my God, the border's secure, it's open, and this and that. And it was really the lowest crossings we'd had for decades. And he's the one that messed it up. Trump's MPP, Migration Protection Protocol, also known as Remain in Mexico,
Yeah.
shuttered the asylum system partway. And then they did it all the way with Title 42. And when they did that, that's when everybody was forced to cross illegally. Trump's policies caused the invasion on purpose, as he
Mhm.
calls it, the invasion. He caused that to happen on purpose. And then he turned around and used that And the Border Patrol Union and all the Republicans spent the last 4 years on TV going, the border's open, the border's open, the border's open, the border's open.
Yeah.
And the border is still just as open as it was under Biden. It's not an open
Nothing's
border.
changed.
Nothing's
No,
changed.
no.
What they
Again,
mean is that the asylum system's open. That's what they mean by an open border. They just don't want an asylum system.
no, they really
Yeah.
don't. And it still wasn't like it was easy to get it. It wasn't
No.
like people were getting
It was pretty
asylum
shitty too. So
you don't have a cell phone? What do you mean you have a cell phone? You grew up in the mountains of Guatemala.
yeah. Oh, your skin is too dark and it won't register you?
Like,
You know?
there were some horrible things that happened during the Biden administration. We talked a little bit about it on this show, but there was a fire that killed a whole bunch of migrants in a holding facility that the Border Patrol agents just let burn. And that happened on the Texas side.
Yeah.
I can't remember what year that was.
I think it was in Mexico though, wasn't it?
The Texas side of Mexico, yeah. When I say
The Texas side of Mexico, yeah. And it was, and the thing is I know people will say, well, that was Mexico. But you have to understand is Mexico's system is funded by us. I mean, the whole time that Trump was screaming about caravans, and remember he said there were Middle Eastern terrorists in the caravans, and everybody was like, prove it, prove it, prove it, and they wouldn't prove it. It's because he was lying. I have the intelligence documents that prove he was lying. They knew exactly how many men were in there, how many women were in there, how many children who had what kind of contagious diseases, because Obama and Bush built the system where when you go into Mexico, you have to register. And when they register, well, we own that system, so we know who they are.
Damn. And you know, it really sucks.
And then the media just doesn't, they won't report it, and they consider somebody like me to just be a disgruntled employee, even though everything I've said has been proven true. But,
what sucks is, I don't know if you feel the same way, Jen. If there was a horde of Middle Eastern terrorists, can they open one kebab shop? Just one. Please. Please. You know why?
Do you not have any down there?
Hell no. You know why? There's no Middle Eastern people down here.
That's true. Well, there's some, but yeah, no, that's true.
They're hiding.
There were never any Middle Eastern terrorists in the caravans. Caravans are just, ways that migrants can travel together and be safer. That's it. So
it's
a boogeyman. It's a boogeyman. And the other thing, when people say, what about the fentanyl? They're bringing the fentanyl. That's another thing that they show pictures of migrants with backpacks and then they talk about fentanyl. And so you think these migrants have fentanyl. The only times that migrants smuggle drugs is when a cartel member says, you're going to put this pack of drugs on your back and you're going to do it because I'm going to hold your daughter hostage until you do it. And you're going to run through here and make the Border Patrol chase you while we bring the actual real drugs around. That's how that happens. They're forced to do it. Migrants are not drug smugglers. Drug smugglers are drug smugglers. And the majority of, I know it's hard to believe. The majority of the drugs comes through our ports legally in cargo containers on the back of trucks, on the back of rail cars, and by ship. And CBP, they only inspect 3.7% of cargo containers. And when they do, 3.7%. So they're not even inspecting 95% of the stuff that is coming in this country. Because if they did, they would have to literally slow down and the economy, goods would not get on the shelves, and it would cause a disaster. That is why Americans are dying of fentanyl, and no politician wants to admit that.
No, it is really foolish to think that 14 migrants with backpacks are bringing in all this fentanyl. I'm like, I don't know. I think more, tourists that come down here for drugs. To give people an idea of how much drug tourism is advertised here, because there's a few things that happen at the border. First of all, medical, dental, and veterinary treatment is extremely inexpensive here. And there are some actually really good doctors. I'm not just talking plastic surgery. I'm talking, my kid needs braces. We'll get it done here. It's going to be 80% off what you're paying. I need a tooth pulled or a root canal. You're going to get it done here because it's going to be so much cheap. My dog's sick. My friend who also does the same work, Ben Burgess, who lives down the street part of the time
Hmm.
and states other part of the time. Why go to the vet in the States when you can go get your dog checked up here for $20
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
medicine? So there is an industry here, but there's also an industry of drug use, of recreational drug use. So
Hmm.
things that are illegal back home where you need a prescription for. I think Viagra kind of around the across the board is a little easier to get, but there's big signs for Viagra.
Hmm.
What's the thing? Oxy.
Oh, Oxycontin.
And
Do
there's
they have the
another.
weight loss drugs? I would imagine the weight loss
Ozempic.
drugs.
There's been a
Yeah, yeah,
big
yeah.
now that so they paint on the walls, right? The picture of the generic. And now
Hmm.
Ozempic has been the big thing that they're painting, and I'm seeing signs now for Ozempic, Ozempic, Ozempic. So I
Yeah.
mean, Americans come down here for plastic surgery, for medical stuff, and then there's just the drug. We just had spring break. There
Hmm.
was so many college students down here high out of their
Hmm.
mind.
Hmm.
They come down
Yeah.
here. The sex trade is down here. It's totally fine in the red light district.
Hmm.
So if you have a vice, you can come down here, and I'm not saying this because I want you to come down. I'm just saying when there's 24-hour pharmacies, it's not because everyone has the flu all the time and we're
Hmm.
drinking the fucking water out of the sink.
Yeah.
It's because there's an industry that the native population is not privy to. It is for American consumption.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
come in with their dollars, buy it, and they bring it over that
Yep.
imaginary line we call the border.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I, if you don't want to talk about your assault, we don't have to.
Well, I don't want to talk in detail about it, but we
We
can
don't
talk
exactly.
about
I
it a
didn't want to
little
get in
bit.
detail about it. I was just kind of. I did back to that question of who polices the police.
Mm.
And like I said before, there's a lot of women that I see that work when I'm crossing the border.
Hmm.
Has this subsided some over
The
time?
sexual assaults
Have
against the
have
female agent?
attitudes changed, or
Mm-mm.
you're like, no, it's the same old?
No, not at all. In fact, when Donald Trump, w- I don't want to say he won the first time, but when Donald Trump was first elected, the first time, the Border Patrol had that private Facebook group called I'm 1015. 1015
Yes.
means I have apprehended, like you
Mhm,
would say, I'm 1015 with 13. So that means I've apprehended 13 people.
mhm.
Um, and, there was a lot of reporters that contacted me and said, "What do you think about this? Is this normal?" And I'm like, "Yeah." you know and quite honestly, I didn't even think about it, but then I really started to look at the pictures that were sent to me, and the one caricature of AOC and Donald
Yeah,
Trump, where Donald Trump is forcing her head
yeah,
down to his groin.
yeah.
That's known as the game of smiles in the Border Patrol, and they play that on graduation night with female agents, where they drug their drinks and they force them to play the game of smiles. So all this has been proved.
Mhm.
There's a podcast by Reveal News called The Fierce 5%. And when I started talking about my sexual assault and how it's not just a one off or here and there, it's systemic and it's used to keep us in our place and to see how dedicated we are. Um, at the time, the chief was our first female chief, Carla Provost. And she was a member of the group, as was the next chief, Rodney Scott. And they said, "Oh, it's no big deal. We didn't know that much about it, and this and that." But they know about the Game of Smiles. They all know about it, and they all know that this goes on. And the Reveal podcast proved it. Even had an agent come out and say, "Yeah, I took part in it, and this is the one." And then James Tomchek earlier was former CBP commissioner. He talked about it. He knew about it and stuff. So we proved it, and yet nobody. They just don't care. When you say they armed a fraternity, so I used to call it the comment. I used to, when people say, "How do you describe it?" I say it's like the worst kind of frat house you can imagine. the worst kind of frat house you can imagine. Border Patrol agents, Horse Patrol. I remember when I was an agent, they weren't coming out to the field and working, and we couldn't figure out why. An assistant chief had to go over there, and it was because um, the head of the Horse Patrol that went out to Campo, it was the Dolzura stables. His brother was a pornography producer, and he
Gross.
was renting out the Border Patrol Dolzura Horse Patrol stables to his brother to film porn, and the
Jesus.
guys could not seem to get their shit in gear and go and do their job. So they were sitting around watching them film porn. Nothing happened to him, and he ended up retiring and gets a pension. Nothing happened to my assaulter, my rapist. He retired a supervisor, and he gets a pension and all this other stuff. So nothing ever really happens to these men. And to tell you how pervasive it is, the motto of the Border Patrol is honor first,
Mhm.
and the men do not say honor first; they say on her first. That is
That's
what the men say. So yeah,
that's frightening.
yeah, it's very frightening. When I look back at it, sometimes I'm like, honestly, I was just naive, like everybody else was. You really don't think that this is like systemic. You think it's a one-off or something like that,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And then you start hearing about the other women that this happened to, and it just keeps going on and on. And then you hear about, you know, there was a BORTAC agent just this last month. BORTAC is the Border Patrol's SWAT team. These are supposed to be the best of the best of the Border Patrol. He was the deputy commander, and he pled guilty to sexually molesting his two daughters from the age of 9 on up for 11 years. And they came forward and they let him plead out to only 2 charges and gave him lifetime probation. And he does not have to register as a sex offender. And the victims are now young women. They're in, early 20s, and they're like begging the judge to put him, at least make him register as a sex offender. Oh no, because he was a hero to the community and blah blah blah. And I think we can keep a better eye on him if he's out roaming around Tucson and this. I mean, it's just it's astonishing. They hire rapists. The head of Tucson sectors, he was their chaplain, 17 years in service. It was found out because of HSI ICE investigation. He was using the internet for child pornography and producing it, and then found out his daughters came forward and said he molested us all our lives. And then it was found out when he was sentenced that he had raped a child when he was 14 years old, and yet the Border Patrol still hired him. And the Border Patrol will not answer for any of this. None of it. Refuses to. They will not tell us how many allegations this man had. How many women, how many complaints did he have from female agents? So it's constant. It's constantly going on, and it never stops. What they're doing now is the Border Patrol has put out a notice to the police down here on the southern border to stop reporting agents who are committing crimes and getting arrested. So we're not even seeing 10% of what they're reporting in their statistics of how many agents they have arrested. So we think there's about an agent arrested a day in CBP, and that's CBP combined with Border Patrol, about an agent arrested a day for a crime. Are you still there? I think you went away. Did I lose you? Am I the only one on the show? Oh my goodness. I'm just going to have to keep on talking. What else? John Daly III, Supervisory Border Patrol agent out of Tucson. After he graduated the academy and went to the Tucson sector, he ended up spending his whole time raping women. He's a white dude, looks like me, white, blonde hair. and used to use a mask and a Hispanic accent to fool women, and that's how he got away with it for so long. So I think I'm gonna. Oh wait, are you
Oh,
back? Are you back?
my power. Yes, my power just went out, and I have
Oh,
no
your
idea
power went
why.
out. I've been talking to your
Yes,
audience. I was hoping you would come back. So
yes, I have a backup plan. This is very
that happens
strange because usually,
sometimes in Mexico.
I feel like they cut my power because of you. The 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 state found out, and they're like, no,
I
you
would
can't do
not
that
be surprised. I would not be surprised.
because this is strange. Hey, did your power go out? I didn't do shit.
They're like, what did you do?
I think I was saying some secret shit, and the state just shut the power off. It was Headskith, that motherfucker. That's my neighbor. I have a nice neighbor.
That's good.
He just came outside. He just yelled out, "What the fuck did you do?" Um, yeah, all the power's out. I have no idea why because it's a very nice early evening here in Rosarito. But
Yeah, it's pretty nice here up in San Diego. So,
oh, so you're close
but
by.
yeah, so I just kept talking while you were gone.
Well, I'm so sorry that happened.
Ah,
It's
shit
rare,
happens.
but
Don't
it
worry
does
about it.
happen. But I don't want to keep you because it has been an hour. But I did want to ask you before you go,
Yes, sir.
if I have you for a couple more minutes. What is your take on this Trump invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798? Is this more of his kind of political kayfabe that he likes to do, or is this really going to cause some problems?
It's both. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's more of his shenanigans, because the Alien Enemies Act requires that we actually be at war, or there is
Mhm.
actually a an invasion from a foreign country or a threat of an invasion by a foreign country. And there is none of that, although they keep trying to say that all these people together are an invasion. They are not connected in any way or anything like that. And so at the same time, he's saying he's deporting people, but deportation is a legal term, and what he's doing is not a deportation. Deportation occurs through an immigration judge, and it's supposed to require due process. He's using this so he can just grab people and throw them on a plane and get rid of them. And we're supposed to believe, like I said, if they really were all criminals, they would show us all of their biographies and tell us who they were.
Mhm.
And they're not doing that. So what it is doing in the courts is it's causing the judge who's hearing the cases right now to try and understand, why are you disobeying my orders? Why are you doing this when you know that that law cannot be used in this way? And essentially, the Department of Justice is coming back for the Trump administration and saying, state secrets, we're not going to tell you shit. Which the government, all presidents have done this before. They've claimed state secrets so that they don't have to talk to people, but or talk to courts and release things. But at the same time, this is not a state secret issue, because as we found out, one guy is like a gay barber and he's not a criminal. He just has some tattoos. I'm
Jesus.
gonna the problem with this is that their database of gangs
Hmm.
is similar to the database of the no-fly list, is similar to the database of the terrorist watch list. And what happens is these cops, border patrol agents, ICE agents, whoever they are, they put all this data into this, and somebody's name might be similar, and then they find out later, oh, it's not who it is. Because here's, once again, I come back to the thing of, if they had caught a terrorist coming across the southern border, you would have heard about it constantly, endlessly, and there would have been charges. They have never come forward and said, look, we caught this terrorist and this is what he was going to do when we stopped him and we're heroes. They've never done that. They just say, we've found 100 people this month on the terrorist watch list. And it's like, okay, well, let's find out who they are. Let's see the cases. Oh, not okay there. Nothing to see here. So they never come forward with any of this stuff. And what this is going to do in the long run is essentially Trump is defying judges' orders. And so that is where we're at, is where can the president decide to defy a completely different branch of government when we're supposed to have checks and balances. So that's the bigger picture of what he is doing with this. And obviously it's traumatic and traumatizing to the people who are going through this. That it's huge for them, obviously, and it's
and
also
sending
big for us
people
as a country. Go
and
ahead.
sending people to I don't know if you can hear me, so I apologize.
I can hear you.
And
Okay.
sending people to El Salvador is insane.
It is insane, and it's going to be a shame on the United States. There is a legal term called, it's a French term called non-refoulement, kind of like non-refoulement. And what that means is in immigration law, you are not allowed to take somebody who's claiming asylum and claiming to need help and send them back to a country that is legitimately endangering them. So, but the problem is we've had both Democrats and Republicans violate this law. Biden violated it with the Haitians. That you cannot justify sending Haitians back to Haiti in any way whatsoever. You just cannot. And yet we keep doing it. And so we're violating not just our international treaties that we have, and then there are treaties that we have with the UN. We're also violating the 1980 Refugee Act, which essentially says what the UN does, which says that asylum laws apply and we have to follow the law. So we've just been kind of making up our own laws, and nobody can hold us accountable because we're the big dog in the world. So.
Do you think Trump's going to get pushback on this? And I know I said one more question. These are like three more.
You can keep going. I don't have nothing to do tonight. We can keep going if you want.
Oh, well,
So.
you don't. You're like
I stepped into that one, didn't I?
Yeah, you fucked around, Jen.
Like,
you fucked around. You don't. Yeah, you don't want to find out with this show. But it's really cold. It's definitely nipple freezing cold for me right now as a Californian. And I just came outside with no jacket, which is stupid.
We can continue it another time, Jason.
Oh no!
Okay,
we're gonna brave this cold. We're gonna brave the cold. We're gonna brave the shut off of power. I'm so mad right now about the power. Anyway,
they try and stop me, but they can't.
Right? They tried. Little did they know. I actually pay my cell phone bill, so take that. Is this going to be the same sort of albatross around Trump's neck that child separation was? Or was the migrant caravan such a great political maneuver by the right that there is a kind of shift in people's want to protect immigrants? And now we just see them all as a dehumanized other that needs to be shuffled back to from which they came?
It's interesting. I've recently seen there's a TikTok out from a guy in Maine. He's a well-known TikToker, and he's very intelligent, and he does these long rants. And he was talking about his neighbor in Maine who had I think her son or nephew, and then her husband taken because got stopped by like a Maine police, maybe state police, and had a suspended license and then an out-of-date green card. Both of them did. And right now, a lot of people are really upset that it got to Maine, but they don't really seem to care when it's down here on the border. So this kind of stuff has been going on down here on the border for decades. There's like almost no Fourth Amendment right. There's almost no Fifth Amendment right down here. And, they search and seize whenever they feel like it. You want to go to the grocery store, they pop up a checkpoint, forget about it. You got to go through the checkpoint and prove that you're a U.S. citizen and all this. So part of me thinks it could be But the reality that I learned from the Trump administration was that what you got to remember, Tom Homan, the border czar, was the guy who created child separation in
Okay.
Trump's first term. And they brought him back, and I think there's some reason why they won't make him an appointment where he has to be confirmed by the Senate because they know he can't be confirmed. And I'm not sure if that's his involvement with child separation, and maybe that's why, but they've been doing it for a long
Hmm.
time. He's a real brutal man. And he's a former Border Patrol agent as well. And I think what they learned in the first Trump administration was that their bragging about children being held in such conditions was too much for Americans. And when you saw Jacob Soboroff be able to get into the buildings and the facilities,
Hmm.
they learned, Americans saw it. And I think that that was a problem for them. So, what we see in the second Trump administration is you are not seeing pictures of people crammed into cells and things like that. They're showing you different types of pictures. They're showing you people that they want you to think are serious and violent criminals shackled by their wrist all the way down around their waist and their ankles, getting aboard military planes. So it appears that they're being treated like criminals. They are criminals. These are not children,
Hmm.
typically not women, usually just men, younger men, and men of color is what they're doing. So they have learned, but they have also learned, Jason, is that there was no accountability for child separation, and the Democrats were weak and had no intention on like making it a law, more of a
Yeah.
law to not separate children instead of just a policy on a whim. So nobody really did anything about it, and they wiped it away, and nobody really cares. So they're going to keep doing whatever they want to do. And in one of the things that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem did, one of the first things she did is she announced that the facilities called Southwest, I want to say it's Southwest Keys. It's the one that runs the unaccompanied child centers that were held in like Walmarts and stuff in the first Trump administration. And they found an ex Border Patrol agent in there who had a prior accusation of pedophilia. And then he was in there trying to get around kids again. And
Jesus.
they had nothing but tons of complaints from the children about sexual abuse from not just him, but other people. And Kristi Noem announced, and it's you can Google it. She announced that the Department of Justice and DHS they're not going to continue to try and press charges against the people who sexually assaulted unaccompanied migrant children in their custody because it's just not important to their mission. So you can, I guess,
Whoa.
I'm not kidding. You can apparently go and work for these people and be a pedo and get away with it, and they're not going to press any charges.
But
So,
isn't that their whole
but
thing, though? Isn't, yeah.
it's all behind
Yeah.
closed doors,
Yeah.
so they know they can't let
Yeah.
you see it, and they can even
Hmm.
actually still kind of like brag about it, but not come right out and say it, and still get away with it because nobody's going to hold them accountable.
But aren't these the anti-pedo people? Aren't these the people that tell you that Hillary Clinton's banging little kids underneath the pizza
Yeah,
place? These are those
yeah.
people.
Yeah, and it's interesting because those, there's QAnon people all over the border who are like, oh, these poor children, blah, 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 on, and they accuse the people that bring them across of being pedos and this and that, but they never accuse the Border Patrol of, or the HHS that's holding them in custody. Because I mean, if you're announcing that you have a problem with pedophilia and you have a problem with children being raped in your custody and sexually assaulted in your custody, but you're not going to do anything about it. I mean, you're essentially saying you're child trafficking. Is that what you're doing? I mean, so you're paying these people to come work for you and allowing them to sexually assault children without any penalties. I mean, that seems to me like child trafficking for sexual purposes. So, you know, they
Oh,
just
that's
don't
great.
feel that it's a problem if they're doing it, quite frankly. They're honorable. You're not to question them. That's the way it is.
It's the whole thing is extremely frightening and maddening. And I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me. Maybe you'll come down here and visit. The power
I
is on
definitely will
usually
come
most of the
visit you.
time.
Yeah.
I have a
I love
beautiful
Mexico.
ocean view.
Do you? I'll come visit you.
Yeah, yeah. I live on a dirt road. There's these two wild horses that harass me.
Ah, it sounds
Ghetto
like a great
horses.
place.
It is. It is. Other than the power going out today, I was really loving I was dancing to Steely Dan all morning. I've been playing
Ah, there
Steely
you
Dan
go.
records in my house.
I
And
can do that.
and then all of a sudden the power went out. So now I'm pissed off. But I think it's back on.
Oh,
So
okay.
thank you, Jen. I'm being totally serious about inviting you down here and staying in touch with you.
Oh, I'm being
We
totally
could do
serious
this.
too. We should talk more about this. I mean, I think, we've had a lot of people comment on it and stuff, and I think, you know, it's hard for me to get my voice out just because everything I say has been true and they can't come back at me on anything. So, they hate my guts, but that's okay.
We got to do. You know what? I'm being so serious. I'm being so serious. If you're down, you should come
I
down here, and we'll do a live show here on the terrace.
am. Mm, let's do that.
Are
I
you a
might be able to
vegetarian?
do it like in maybe towards the last couple of weeks, April, maybe, because I
Okay.
got to go to
And you're
Tucson.
not you're not a vegetarian, right?
No, I
Okay. Then
like
you're welcome in my
vegetables,
home.
but I'm okay.
This is,
I'm
this
from
is
Alabama,
vegetarian
man. Come
free
on.
zone.
I'm a big girl. I'm a big girl
Yeah,
now.
you could be on a carb only diet. You've been in California a long time. You've been out here just
I know my wife
eating
keeps
all these
trying to tell
vegan.
me she calls it transmogrification into a hippie California. She's working on me, but I'm
Is she
still
is she a
smoking
native
weed though,
Californian?
so she's from
Is she a native
California.
California? Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
there you go.
yeah.
She's a
So
vegetarian.
no, but she has to be gluten free because she's gotten this gluten intolerant thing. So
Oh my God. Well, I can
makes
do that. I
pizza
can
really
definitely.
hard. I really crave pizza, but
There's some good pizza places down here too. Oh my God. Like
I don't know.
legit good. Like legit good. But look, come down here. I'll cook for you
Yeah.
guys. I actually cooked in the South for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you can trust that I know what I'm doing when I'm cooking.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's do this.
So, well,
It'll
thank
be
you very
fun.
much, Jen.
Thank you, Jason.
We'll be in touch. And again, wherever you guys are watching or listening to this show, there's a link in the description. It's the first line in the description to Jen's website where you can get her book and follow her work. And what else you got going on, Jen, before we go?
I'm trying to work on a TED Talk here for, there's this thing called Sunday Assembly here in San Diego, and I'm going to do that in
Okay.
May. It's like, I think it's the third Sunday, but it's not a religious thing. It's people who grew up going to Sunday service and miss that
Mm-hmm.
community, but don't necessarily want the religiosity of that. And so they
Sure.
bring in people to talk all the time. And so they're giving me like 20 minutes to do a presentation and stuff like that. And then I'm also going to Tucson and Silver City, New Mexico in the next couple of weeks. But I'm also on Substack, and my book is called Against the Wall by Jenn, and it's available on all web platforms, Amazon, Bookshop, Barnes and Noble. And I did the Audible. I read the Audible. That was really hard, but I did it.
Oof. You read your own book.
I did.
Props.
Yeah,
Props.
that was
Well,
really
thank
hard.
you, Jen. And I
Thank you,
wish I had
sir.
the applause, but take care.
All right. Talk to you later.
That was Jen Budd. Wherever you're watching or listening, there's links in the description. I'm going to do the champagne room. It looks like the power is back. I'm going to attempt to do the champagne room. So if you are a TIR patron, the champagne room link is up. If you are a paid YouTube subscriber, the champagne room link is up. If you would like to join us in this champagne room, where we can continue some of this conversation, as well as some more insanity. Patreon.com/Bitter Lake Presents, wherever you're watching or listening. There's a link in the description. And I'm going to go put a coat on because it's really cold. And I am out.